Hey guys, so today's video is going to be an ultimate study guide video. I'm so excited to do this. You guys really requested it after watching my 15 habits of 4.0 students video, which by the way, if you haven't seen it, I'll make sure to link it in one of these corners. So let's go ahead and get started. Don't forget to follow me on my socials and like the video, subscribe. You know the drill. I'm not gonna sit here and give you a speech. We just need to get started with the video. You're welcome. So I have my notes here. I wrote down a bunch of stuff, so if you see me looking down, that is why. So first thing is know when your exam will be, and this way you can prep probably 2 weeks in advance. I would recommend 2 weeks in advance, especially if you're not used to this whole procedure. This is something that I do and it has helped me through high school and college, and I've kind of perfected it as my years of studying have come to an end, but this is just kind of the procedure I go through. So hopefully it works for you. Let me know. Also, if you try it, come back to the video, comment, and let me know. I'd love to know if it helped you. Sometimes it's been a week before, sometimes a week and a half. Not my proudest moments, sometimes the night before, okay? I know, just stop it, okay? That was a senior year thing. I'm sorry. Just don't do it. Honestly, 2 weeks in advance is perfect. Next thing I try to figure out is what is the test going to be like. This way I have an idea in my head of what I'm about to take. So number one, I ask my professor what the format of the test is. Is it going to be multiple choice, true and false? Is there going to be an open-ended section? I just want to know how to prepare because there's certain ways, especially with flashcards and stuff, that you can do in order to help you memorize a certain way for a certain type of test. So if you were doing a true and false, I would just write a bunch of facts on my cards and make myself decide if it was true or false. It would just be a practice, I guess. I hope that makes sense. What type of test is going to be? Who dare text me right now? I knew it was that person. I also like to ask my professor the best way to study because especially when you're on one-on-one talking to the professor after class, sometimes they feel a little bit more open to share with you what the test is, because sometimes when they're talking for the entire class, there's certain people that they don't want to tell details to, which is so stupid. But people who come late, they specifically don't want to share the test details with them. But I have countless times come up to my professor and been like, hey, I know the exam's coming up in a week. I was just wondering what the format of the exam is going to be and what's the best way to study. And they usually open up and say oh, well, I would really recommend looking at chapter 4 and 5. And that's something that they wouldn't share with the rest of the class. And I'm in here in the group chat, I'm guys, chapter 4 and 5, it's really helpful. So just be able to talk to your professor, I guess, and also use the provided study guides because there's a reason they gave that to you. The next thing that I typically do is collect all the materials that I feel are necessary for this exam. So if that is notes, assignments, homeworks, quizzes, and previous exams, that's what I'm going to collect out of all of my stuff. My binder is usually a mess. I try to put it in order right before the exam, and so once all of them are in order, I kind of have a process of where I'm going. So I'll go chapter 1, I'll look at the notes, then I'll have the quiz that we took, then I'll have I don't know, extra problems to work on, and then the homework. It's kind of a procedure where I'm able to kind of go through the steps of the class and remember. So that's very helpful. The next thing is create a final check, something that you can take right before you have to take your exam, your test, whatever, and it'll be kind of your end all. So what I like to do is if they give you practice problem or a exam prep, I like to use that, but if that's not something that's available, totally okay. I usually find extra problems, or I try to find extra questions in the textbook through more homework, or you can even ask your professor and just be hey, are there any good problems that I could use to practice? That's very helpful. So anyways, I just create a practice test. Now if this is open-ended or something along those lines, I'll create fake questions. Sometimes your professor will tell you a certain question that could potentially be on the exam, or certain topics that are the open-ended question. They always do this, I'm telling you. It's really annoying at this point. So it's you have a certain idea of how you are expected to take this test, the format, so you kind of can create a fake test. And don't look at it until you're done studying. So once you've done that, it's time to create your study plan. I'm going to separate this area into math and science, which is usually more concepts that build on top of one another. Then there's non-English and history, which is more of memorization, fact recall, vocabulary. When I say non-English, I'm saying foreign languages. In the US here, we all have literature and like a writing class or something, which is kind of like English. So I'm talking like a non-English class, but clearly if you're in a different country, it'd be a foreign language and like your own writing and reading classes. So that is how I separate it into 3 different categories. So we're going to start off with the math and science section. So I really like math and science tests because they're very straightforward. You literally either get the question right or you get the question wrong, because usually there is a certain answer that is expected. It's not very like, well, I feel this way. So that's kind of why I enjoyed those tests. But since they're so straightforward, really the best way to study for them is number 1, understand the material, and then number 2, go in and just do a bunch of problems. So for me, the way that I start it is I usually try to do a few problems from every chapter to begin with. This will just be like 3 problems for every chapter, and if I find that there's a chapter that I know from before that I was having issues with, or I didn't study yet, or I'm just having difficulty with, I will go seek out a teaching assistant or even talk to the professor to just help explain the concept a little bit better to me. Now, I am someone who learns very well from listening and seeing someone do the problem in front of me. I get very bored reading textbooks, and it doesn't help me learn because I'm just like constantly rereading the same thing over and over again, and it's just not the way I learn. But clearly you have to know the way that you learn. If you're good at reading textbooks, you can clearly read that and try to figure it out yourself. But anyways, I do that first, and then I go out and I just sit there and do problems. I'll have my notes, like chapter 1 notes with like the homework assignments, the quiz, and then like chapter 2, blah, 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 blah. I will do the homework problems, the quiz problems, the homework problems, the quiz problems, the like homework problems, the quiz problems for every single chapter. And the ones that I was having more difficulty with, I will seek out even more problems. And in college especially, there are certain online. They're called test banks. So they have just a bunch of questions. Like some of them have like thousands upon thousands and upon thousands of questions, which essentially can create a test. So sometimes professors pull from those test banks in order to create tests. So if you search the class that you are in, you can usually find something similar, or even someone else's study guide, which is quite useful. So I definitely recommend checking that out before actually hopping in and trying to create your own. But that really helps because you have just a lot of problems. And I'm telling you guys, for science and math classes, it is so helpful to just go in and do problems so much, because there have been times when I don't understand the concepts, but I learned that there are certain types of wording in a certain way to kind of make a certain type of word problem or a certain type of like science problem, that there's a solution to it, and like it's the same thing over and over and over again. If you do a lot of them, and when I say a lot of them, I'm not saying like 20, I'm saying like sit in there and like just do 100 problems, okay? And keep going, keep at it, because it'll be very helpful to see which ones work for you and which ones don't. Now, I work on every problem. If I got it super easily and I knew it, I put a check mark next to it. If I felt like it was difficult, I circle it. If I find that something that I like don't even know how to approach it, I put a star next to it and I go ask a teaching assistant, my friend in the class, or even the professor. That way I can actually get help. And those are the ones that I will definitely be checking right before the exam, just to make sure I am like 100% ready and like certain of what those are. So for non-English and history classes, so I'm saying like foreign languages, it's typically something more of like recall and trying to understand like vocabulary or facts. So this is where flashcards come in. So instead of having like chapter 1 notes and then like problems and then quiz, I usually have chapter 1 notes and then like vocab or like /info. And what I'll be doing is I will literally have like a vocab thing, like a big stack of flashcards of vocabulary or facts that I feel are necessary. Now in multiple classes, especially in like my management classes, it would literally be just like the PowerPoints. I would take the details off of the PowerPoints, like if there is a certain procedure and it's called a certain way, I put it on one side of the flashcard, and on the other side I write all the steps or the processes of that procedure, just like little details, just it just becomes an entire slide on one note card. I prefer that than just reading slides, because that way I can really be interactive, and the ones that I am 100% certain of, I can exclude from the pile and really focus on the ones that need my attention. I cannot stress this enough. I have seen so many people sitting there studying for hours upon hours, and what they're doing is they're studying the material that they already know, and they exclude that chapter that they feel like they're having difficulty, and they're like, it's okay. But usually that chapter is the very end and like something that you just recently learned, and of course it's going to be difficult. But the thing is, if you don't study that and you just stick with the things that you already know, you're not helping yourself. So if you are confident in information that you're studying, you need to move on. You need to move on to the difficult parts. You need to move on to the ones that are scaring you, because if you don't, it's going to be your weakness on this exam, and you can't have weaknesses when you go into the exam. I mean, you can. Clearly, I've gone into so many exams not prepared at all, but it really helps to be able to have more of a procedure rather than just sitting there like, what do I even study? You know what I mean? So when I have those note cards in front of me, I go through them like multiple times. Like, I will have the whole entire stack in front of me, and I will go through every single note card, reading it 1 or 2 times through the entire pile. After I've done that, I will try to recall it. So if it's like, pretend it says like, I don't know, BNY, and I'm just like, oh, what does BNY stand for? And like, I look at it and I try to like remember what it stands for, and then I flip it over. I'm like, correct. Okay, cool. And so I go through all of that again, and then the 4th time I go through it, I will be going in and pulling things out that I feel like I am very confident with. This will downsize the pile and make you focus on the ones that are the most difficult for you. And again, it's difficult to get them, so you're going to have to go through them a few times, even if it's just reading them, but eventually you'll recall them a lot better. So it's something that I really recommend. Flashcards are really great for vocab classes or history classes, and try to tell a story with it. So especially in history, that was my weakest subject. I hate history so much. I didn't want to like memorize it, you know, like I'd like to read about it, but I don't want to memorize it. And for me, the difficult part was trying to figure out what events came first and which ones came after. So it's nice to kind of have a timeline or a storyline, and to be able to just like create a story in your head to keep going through it. So I recommend that as well. Just do your best, I guess. I don't really have any advice for that. If anybody has any advice, by the way, please leave them in the comments. This is like a group effort, okay? We're a community here trying to help one another survive life. Another thing is, for these types of classes, usually online, there are a bunch of like on Quizlet and like other websites, there are already made flashcards, but they're like clearly electronic, but you can print them out and stuff. But it's really nice to be able to just have note cards already made, instead of wasting time making note cards, which also is such a huge waste of time. So be careful with how much time you spend on that. I used to be a little bit obnoxious with my note cards, but you don't have to color code them 12 different colors, okay? Seriously. It will help, but like, it's not essential. You can use black ink on both sides and you'll be fine. Just highlight like when you go through them the 3rd time or whatever. Alright, so now for the last section, it is like literature and writing classes. These are also some of my least favorite ones because it is so subjective when it comes to the grading. I highly recommend, especially in these classes, to really talk to your professor about learning what rubric they're using, and also maybe like submitting a practice essay and just kind of learning what they like to see. Because I've had teachers, especially in high school, where like sophomore year I had a teacher that liked me writing a certain way. Then I went the next year to a different teacher and she hated the way I wrote, and she was like, no, why are you writing like that? I'm like, because my sophomore year teacher taught us to write it like that. And so I would switch up my style completely just to please that one teacher. So especially in those types of classes, you have to like try to please the teacher, because that's how you're going to get a good grade. In writing and English classes, my favorite part was the fact that it is like, you don't necessarily need to study, it's just good to kind of review. So those were really fast to study for me. The first thing I do is figure out the rubric. How is the test going to be? Sometimes there's multiple choice, sometimes it's just like open-ended questions, which is great. I'm fine. Okay, great. So moving on, I always practice my like speed writing by doing other essays. That really does help to get you kind of in the mindset of like writing an essay really quick. I also like to make outlines for practice essays that could potentially pop up. So if this is about a book, certain like theme that you guys are going through, I like to write those themes out, those chapters of the books out, things that you guys talked about, and just really going in and finding the main topics. Now, SparkNotes was one of my favorite websites of all time. I still love it so much. But basically, SparkNotes kind of gives you a really quick overview of a book. Sometimes I haven't even sometimes I didn't read books and I literally used SparkNotes and I got an A in the class. There was one English class in college. We had to read, I want to say like 8 books. I read maybe half of one of them and I got an A in the class because I used SparkNotes for everything. It was amazing because with every chapter it comes with summary and it tells you character details. There's a lot of discussion in the class. Pay attention to those because your teacher pays attention to certain details that like she really does find important, or he just pay attention to that, write it down, jot it down, star it, especially if they say like that's a huge theme in the book, you know what I mean? Like those that's the key. You got to put a star next to that. And just try to see if I can write some bullet points for it. So if there is a theme like juxtaposition or just something overall in a text that you've been reading, I would bullet point at least 3 examples from the text that you find that it happens. Usually it's quite easy, especially if you go through SparkNotes. They even have like themes, like an area where you can go to themes of the book, read up on like the characters, and just like read the summaries for the chapters and the analysis. Analysis is key, guys. If you want to get good grades, make sure you learn how to analyze a text. So for those types of classes, the most important thing is just kind of learn your professor and just pay attention to the class discussions, write everything down, and examples that you guys talk about in the text, and the page numbers. Oh my gosh, how much do I hate myself for not writing down page numbers, especially when you were writing essays and your professor's like, yeah, please use like 5 quotes, and you're just sitting there, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been only reading SparkNotes. So if like somebody in the class is like, oh my gosh, yes, on page 22, like there's this really great quote, write that down. Okay, write that down. So I don't want you guys to get the impression that I've kind of said some stuff here that I didn't study and that I tried to take the easy way out. I don't think there ever is an easy way out, especially when you're studying. Sometimes you just have to learn to balance your time. I took a lot of AP classes and a lot of honors classes together, and I had very high amount of credits together in college. So for me, sometimes it was difficult to study for a certain test because I had 3 other ones that I had to study for, and I would kind of shuffle and figure out which one I felt was most important. And so sometimes I wouldn't have the opportunity to read a book because I had to SparkNotes it, or else I would have failed my math test, you know what I mean? So it comes with this huge balance in life, and it's so difficult, I know, but you have to just learn how to cope and get through it. So I highly recommend creating this process. You don't have to actually write things out and create detailed study guides. I love to do that when I have the time, and it's quite helpful. I don't know if this video was very forward and just kind of duh, or if some of you guys actually felt like it helped. Let me know. I do have a few certain ways that I plan for exams and stuff, so if you'd like me to show you guys my exam routine or how I do my homework when I come home from school, that type of a routine, I'd like to share that with you guys, especially being someone who graduated. I feel like since this is still all in my mind, I can definitely share my details. But yeah, I wish you the best of luck this year. I know school is so difficult, and I don't think I've ever been as busy as I was when I was in school. And people who are older sometimes are like, oh my gosh, you're in school, you shouldn't be worrying about anything. But it is so hectic and keeping up with everything. So kudos to all of you guys fighting the battle of school or college or whatever you're doing. But just keep pushing, and hopefully this helps create study guides. Processes are gonna save your life. So yeah, keep your notes in order. If you guys want how to take notes video, I could maybe do that for you guys. I don't know. I don't know if my notes are super, but I feel like they're so straightforward. But yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, don't forget to subscribe, join the family, give it a thumbs up, and comment below what you do to study. Is there something different than me? Did you try something that worked and completely you don't need to study anymore? We'd love to know, okay? I'm not in school anymore, but I'm nosy as hell, so let a girl know. Okay, I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!